Welcome to episode 1 of the 6-part mini-series on how to drop 20 pounds of body fat and build lean muscle mass so you can feel more confident in your clothes. In the next 6 episodes, I'm going to show you exactly how to drop fat and build muscle so you can feel really confident with how your body looks and when you wear any sort of clothes that you want. But why should you listen to me? So my name's Christian and I've been a coach for the past 12 years and I've helped hundreds of guys transform their body and get in the best shape of their life so they can feel more confident with how they look. Just normal day-to-day guys like Charlie, Sean, Sam, who got in the best shape of their lives from these results here from training no more than 3 days per week. I'm also the owner of the Unit Gym, which is a private gym just outside Manchester for clients only. I've competed in 2 bodybuilding shows and I've got a British record in powerlifting. Now, I've been at both ends of the spectrum. Like I said, when I used to compete in bodybuilding, I was literally training 6 days per week, 2 hours a day, doing loads of cardio. But at the time I was living at home, I didn't have much responsibility. I wasn't with my partner yet. I wasn't having a baby like I'm expecting in the next few months, and I didn't own the gym. So I had the time and energy to do that. But as I got older, as I got the gym, as me and Chloe bought our own house, and now we're having a baby boy in the next few months, things had to change. I couldn't just keep training 6 days per week, but it's still really important to me to look in good shape and feel good. And it's the same for the clients I train. A lot of the clients that I train, like Sam, Sean, Stu, they've got families, they've got busy careers, they run their own business, some of them as well, so they haven't got the energy and time to train multiple times per week. So they needed a system where they can get the best shape of their life without living in the gym. But the thing is, most coaches will tell you have to train 5 to 6 days per week and you just have to be quote unquote more disciplined. And that's without them understanding you or your life. And that's why I come up with the 3-hour training system where you can get maximum results in minimum time. And this is how it works. It's based on something I call the Core 5. And if you follow these Core 5 principles, you will get in shape training no more than 2 to 3 times per week. Yes, you heard me right, just 2 to 3 times per week, 45 to 60 minutes per session. Now, this training system has been tried and tested on hundreds of my clients and also me, producing results like this on the screen here. Take Sean, for example. Before Sean and I started working together, he was doing loads of HIIT classes. He was trying to do loads of cardio and he wasn't getting anywhere and he wasn't able to shift that belly fat or get the definition he wanted. By just training 3 times per week, he managed to totally transform his body by doing less, but what he was doing was proper. Same with my client Sammy. Sam works as a police officer and he did a lot of mixed shifts, so he couldn't commit to more than 3 times per week. There'll be weeks where he could only do 2 sessions, and he achieved this all the way from October to March. Now, before I go into the Core 5 principles, if you want to download your own free copy of this 3-day training system, just press the link in the description below. So let's get into it. What is step 1 of the Core 5 principles? Step 1 is you want to make sure you're training each muscle group 2 times per week. The reason why this is so important is, do you know when you train one muscle group, you stimulate something called protein synthesis? That's just a fancy way of saying your muscle's going to grow in that time period. So when you stimulate protein synthesis, that's the only time your muscle can grow. So let's say you train chest on Monday, you're going to stimulate protein synthesis and it only lasts typically anywhere from 36 to 48 hours. So that means by Wednesday, your chest is finished growing. So the problem with things like the bro split, where you train chest Monday, back Tuesday, shoulders Wednesday, legs Thursday, is you're waiting a whole 7 days again to train that muscle group. So now we know principle number 1 is training each muscle group 2 times per week. What we can do now is start creating a training structure that will work in and around your life, but still following these core principles so you can get the best results possible and give you the most bang for your buck. So let's say you can only train 3 days per week. The way I would structure my training program, if I could only train 3 days per week, based on that number 1 principle, is I would do upper body on Monday, where you literally cover your whole upper body, including your chest, your back, your shoulders, your arms. I would then do lower body, which is legs, on Wednesday, where you just train your quads, your hamstrings, your calves, if you care about calves. I don't, I never train calves. And then you can do full body on Friday, where you literally train your whole body, your chest, your back, your shoulders, your arms, and your legs. And by doing that, you are literally training each muscle group 2 times per week across a 3-day span, rather than doing chest Monday, back Tuesday, shoulders Wednesday, legs Thursday, and shoulders Friday, where that's a 5-day split and you only train everything once. Now you might be thinking, yeah, but Christian, what exercises should I be doing on this training plan or on them particular days, or don't worry, I've got you covered. So this is step 2 of the Core 5 principles. In step 2, you want to make sure you're choosing anywhere from 2 to 5 different exercises for each body part. The reason why you pick 2 to 5 is it's the sweet spot to have enough variation where you're doing different exercises that allows you to hit different angles of that muscle group, which is really good for muscle growth. Anything more than 5 is almost like adding too many fancy ingredients to a dish and you end up sort of spoiling it. But 2 to 5 is the sweet spot. Anything less than 2, where you're just doing 1, isn't enough variation and you can get a bit stale doing the same exercise over and over. So let's say you pick 5 exercises. What you want to do is spread them 5 exercises across both sessions in the week. You don't want to do all 5 exercises in your first upper body session on Monday. The big mistake people make here is, let's say when they're training chest, they do like flat bench press, incline bench press, decline bench press, cable fly, and then dumbbell fly. It's like putting a chicken in the oven for too long. You end up just spoiling it. You just overcook it. It's just too much. So what you want to do typically is maybe 3 exercises for your chest on Monday, and then maybe 2 exercises for your chest on the Thursday. That spreads it across the week. The next thing you want to do is make sure that out of them 5 exercises that you do choose, 3 to 4 of them are compound multi-joint exercises. Things like bench press, incline dumbbell press, barbell strip press, barbell bent over row. So the reasons why you pick compound exercises as the predominant part of your program is because it works loads of different muscles at once in one particular exercise. So for example, when you do a bench press, you're gonna work your pecs, your shoulders, and your triceps. So it's like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You're gonna stimulate a lot of muscle growth in 3 areas. As when you do an isolation exercise, you're typically only working 1 muscle group. So what you wanna do is, if you're a busy guy and you haven't got a lot of time, you wanna make sure that 80% of your workouts are compound exercises, because you're just gonna tick loads of boxes with 1 exercise. And also with compound exercises, you're gonna place a lot of tension on the muscle. So what I mean by tension is, when you do a compound exercise, typically you can produce more strength and more force. Think of like a bench press. When you're doing a bench press, you'll be able to bench press more than you can dumbbell fly. So usually when you can produce more force, it's better for growth because there's more tension on the actual muscle. So let's say you pick 3 to 4 compound exercises. That leaves you 1 to 2 exercises that you can do isolation based. So let's say for your chest, you can do a flat bench press, an incline dumbbell press, and then maybe a dip. And then you could do a cable crossover and maybe a flat dumbbell fly. So 70% is compound, 20 to 30% is isolation. So now you know that you're gonna train each muscle group 2 times per week, and you're gonna pick anywhere from 2 to 5 different exercises per body part. How do we actually structure each day in your plan so you know exactly how many exercises you should do in your plan and how you should go about it? So this is what you need to do. So on the first upper body day, let's say on a Monday, you're going to choose 2 different exercises for your chest, 2 different exercises for your back, 1 exercise for your shoulders, 1 exercise for your biceps, and 1 exercise for triceps. So the reason why you do 2 chest exercises, 2 back exercises, but then only 1 exercise for, let's say, shoulders, biceps, and triceps is, like I said earlier on in the video, when you do, let's say, bench press or incline dumbbell press, you're already training a large portion of your front shoulder and your tricep. So when you get to the end of the workout, you don't need to do 2 to 3 different exercises for your triceps or shoulders, because you've already stimulated them massively through the compound exercises at the start of the workout. So when you structure your plan, you want to make sure that at the beginning of the workout, you are doing mainly compound exercises. So for example, you could do a flat bench press for exercise 1, then you could do an incline dumbbell press, then you could do a lat pull down, then you could do a bent over row. So by the time you move to shoulders, biceps, and triceps, you've already done a lot of the muscle stimulation through them big compound exercises. Now you can do more isolation-based stuff just to get a little bit more volume in them muscle groups. For your lower body day, your leg day, I would choose anywhere from, I would say probably 2 quad exercises, and I would probably make them compound again, like a high bar squat, then a leg press, and then 2 hamstring exercises, something like a hamstring curl, and maybe some sort of Romanian deadlift. If you want to throw some calves in there at the end, feel free. I never train calves. But that's what I do with lower body. Then on your full body day, which is the last session of the week, because it's full body, it's naturally a longer session. So what I will be doing is picking 1 exercise per body part, or you're going to be in there longer than an hour. So if your time constraint is an hour max, pick 1 exercise per body part for that full body session. So for example, incline bench press for chest, barbell row for back, leg press for quads, Romanian deadlift for hamstrings, barbell curl for biceps, a dumbbell lateral raise, and maybe a tricep push down. So you're doing anywhere from like 7 to 9 exercises, and I'll just do one exercise on that full body day for each muscle group. So step 3 of the core 5 principles is, well, how many sets should I be doing on each exercise, Christian? So that's what we're gonna cover right now. I would say anywhere from 8 up to 20 sets per week on each muscle group is around the sweet spot for most people. I would probably start off in the lower end. So I'd probably start off on maybe, let's say, 10 sets per week for each muscle group, but then I would spread it evenly across the week. I wouldn't do all of the sets in one session because there's only a certain amount of sets that produce muscle growth, and anything after a certain number is almost like, again, I'm going to use the chicken analogy. It's almost like putting the chicken in the oven. It says that 40 minutes is going to cook the chicken at 200 degrees, but then you decide you're going to cook it for 60 minutes at 210 degrees. Like, cooking it any longer isn't going to make the chicken taste any more nice. It's going to make it worse. Same for muscle growth. So it's a sweet spot of how many sets you need to do per session. So let's say you're doing 10 sets per week on chest. The way I would do that is maybe anywhere from 4 to 6 sets in the first session, and then anywhere again from 4 to 5 sets in the second session of the week. So it doesn't have to be exact 5 sets, but evenly spread throughout the week. What that's going to do is create that protein synthesis, which is where your muscles grow in that session 1. And by the time you come to session 2, your muscle is ready to be trained again, and you can do another 4 to 6 sets to stimulate that protein synthesis again. So let's say you pick 5 sets for your first upper body day. That could look like 3 sets of flat bench press and then 2 sets of incline dumbbell press. That's going to stimulate decent growth, especially if you're training it hard and you're close to failure. And then on the second upper body day, you could do, let's say, 3 sets of a seated chest press machine, and then you could do 3 sets of maybe a dumbbell fly or a cable fly. There's roughly your 10 sets per week across different exercises, and that's going to be enough to stimulate a lot of muscle growth. Where most guys go wrong, going back to the chicken analogy, I probably love that analogy, most guys on Monday would do 3 sets on flat bench press, 3 sets on incline bench press, 3 sets on decline bench press, 3 sets of cable fly, 3 sets of dumbbell fly. It's well overkill. Your chest is going to be sore for the whole week, but just because you're sore for the whole week doesn't mean you're growing muscle for the whole week. So you want to do enough where you stimulate muscle growth, but you're not doing it overkill. You're not overkilling it, sorry. So you can do that second session of the week again on the Thursday or Friday, or whatever day you're going to sort of do it. So now you know that you're going to do anywhere from, let's say, to starting off with in your first week of training, 8 to 10 sets per week for each muscle group. You want to be able to determine how many reps you're doing with each exercise. So I use a very general rule of thumb here, which I think applies very well for most people. I would say for your compound exercises like bench press, squats, leg press, barbell bent over row, deadlifts, I would say aim anywhere between 5 and 10 reps for your compound exercises. I personally go between 6 and 8. That's what works really well for me. Because with compound exercises, you're basically working loads of different muscles at once, loads of different joints, and what that allows you to do is lift a lot more weight, because when you're working loads of muscles through loads of different joints, you can produce a lot more force. So that's why lifting more weight in a lower rep range works really well for compound exercises, but not necessarily for isolation exercises. Because when you do an isolation exercise, typically you're only moving, let's say, one joint at one time, or you're targeting a very small muscle group. So for example, let's say with dumbbell lateral raises, if you tried to do, let's say, a set of 5 on dumbbell lateral raises, you'd have to pick a really heavy weight, and it's just going to feel really weird in your shoulders trying to dumbbell lateral raise something for 5 reps, and it's not really going to give you a good muscle connection where you feel your shoulders being worked, but it's going to feel really strange on your joints and your connective tissue. So that's why with isolation exercises, typically 10 to 20 reps works really well. So you can pick a weight, let's say, that allows you to do 15 to 20 reps on dumbbell lateral raises. You get to between 15 and 20, you're close to failure where it's really hard, but you're feeling the muscle work, but it's not really aggravating your joints or your connective tissue. So now you know when you're structuring your workouts, they're going to be predominantly compound based at the beginning of the workout in the lower rep range. And then when you get to the isolation exercises towards the end of the workout, it's going to be in a higher rep range, let's say between 10 and 20 reps. So step 4 is we want to apply something called progressive overload. Progressive overload is basically a fancy term of saying training needs to get progressively harder over time for your body to keep adapting and keep changing. Because think of it like this. Let's say all you ever do is lift the same weight for the same amount of sets, for the same amount of reps in every single workout over and over again. At first, your body will grow and build muscle because it's new, you haven't done it before, but over time, your body will quickly adapt to the workout that you've been doing and it won't grow anymore because you're not giving it a reason to grow. So what you need to do is making sure that you're applying progressive overload and you're giving your body a reason to grow muscle and get bigger over time. So how do we actually apply progressive overload? I would say step one is you need to make sure that you're tracking your workouts. What I mean by tracking your workouts is when you're going in to do a session, you log in what you're lifting, what exercises that you're doing, and you're keeping a note of it. You can do it with a pen and paper, you can do it with your phone. I personally use an app on my phone to keep log of it, because what this will do is when you're keeping a record of what you're lifting in the gym, when you do that exact same training session the week after, you can refer back to it and you can apply progressive overload, which I'll talk about in a second on how to do it. But you can refer back to it and be like, okay, this is what I did last week. How can I now make this more difficult? Because if you don't keep a log of it, the chances are you're not going to remember every single detail of that workout. You won't remember what weight lifted, or you might mistaken, you think you did a certain amount of reps, but in fact you did, 2 reps less. So you need to keep a log of everything. That's really important. So I would say the easiest way to apply progressive overload to your training is trying to increase the weight a little bit more than what you did the previous week. So the question is, how much more? So this is the general rule of thumb I use. Usually around 2.5 kilos more than the previous week is a really good increase. Now, the thing is, when I was younger and when I first started training, I remember I used to look at the big guys in the gym and sometimes they'll add like a 1.25 kilo plate on either side of the bench press. And I'll be thinking, why are they adding such a small amount of weight? What's that gonna do? But that's the thing that actually builds muscle and allows you to keep adapting each week and getting bigger and stronger. Because if you add too much weight too quickly, that's when you hit a plateau. So let's say, for example, on the bench press, last week you lifted 60 kilos for, let's say, 3 sets of 8. The next week you could try 62.5 kg for 3 sets of 8. Now you might be thinking that's only a 2.5 kilo increase, but think of it like this. When you do 60 kg for 3 sets of 8, that's 480 kg total. The next week, if you do 62.5 kg for 3 sets of 8, you've now lifted 500 kg total. That's 20 kilos more. Imagine if you did that across the course of 2 months. I don't know what the maths is, so I can't tell you how much more it is, but it'll be a lot more. So what you've got to remember is the small increases in weight over time is what adds up to the big compounding results long term, not trying to increase too much too quickly. Now, another way you can apply progressive overload is actually lifting the same weight that you did last week, but trying to do more reps. So for example, let's say you're working between 6 and 8 reps on a certain exercise. And let's say week 1, you do flat bench press, 60 kg for 3 sets of 6. What you could do the week after is 3 sets of 7. And then the week after that, 3 sets of 8. So you can add 1 extra rep each week, and it doesn't have to be across all 3 sets either. You can literally just increase 1 set by 1 rep, and that is still progressive overload. Because there'll be some weeks where it'll be really hard to try and apply progressive overload across all 3 sets. So you might only be able to increase it by 1 rep on one of the sets, but that's okay because it's about the long term. And if you do that over time, that's how you build and transform your body. So this is step 5, the last step of the core 5 principles, and it is be flexible. What do I mean by this? This is more of a mindset, I would say. I think it's really important to be able to have an adaptable and flexible mindset when it comes to your training. And what I mean by that is, if there's a week where you can't get 3 sessions in, you can only get 2 training sessions in because something's going on in life. A big mistake people make is they think to themselves, I've missed a session, I've messed it up, I'll start again next week. But it's that mindset approach that keeps people stuck and not being consistent, which results in not making a change with the body. So even if you can only get 2 training sessions in for that week, don't think that week has gone to shit, because that week where you can only get 2 sessions in, you could still do an upper body and a full body session, and you're still gonna make progress. Right guys, that is the end of episode 1. So if you found this helpful, really appreciate it if you could drop me a like, drop me a comment, and subscribe to the channel. In the next video, I'll be talking to you about something called the upper body blueprint, which is where I'll be talking to you about how to build more definition in your upper body and the biggest mistakes guys make when it comes to this.